Bills, Dolphins, Week 9 in Orchard Park. We're going to get you ready for it today on the Crossover Thursday episode on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this Crossover Thursday episode of both Locked On Bills and Locked On Dolphins. As always, a big thank you for making us your first listen every day. We are a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, joined by Kyle Krabs, the outstanding host of Locked On Dolphins. We are here to get you ready for Week 9's matchup between the Bills and Dolphins, this time in Orchard Park. We're going to give you the path to victory for each team. We'll talk Bills storylines, but we start our conversation by focusing in on the Miami Dolphins. And Kyle, Tua Tagovailoa returned to action last week against the Arizona Cardinals. Very simple. How did he look, and what did it mean for the Dolphins offense?
Yeah, obviously, well, you scored more points than any game this season, so that's a great start to move the ball, score 27 points. They had a couple opportunities late in the game to kind of put the game away and didn't get it done. And it was a contributing factor to Miami losing a game against Arizona, which they had a double-digit lead for the second consecutive game and couldn't close the game. But for Tua in general, I thought you saw some general rust, more so from like a physical and a mechanics standpoint as compared to a decision-making standpoint. I thought he was very sharp and crisp and made a lot of quick decisions with the football, had a lot of good accuracy throws with his timing stuff. Took a deep shot down the left sideline late to Tyreek Hill that I think if Tua was more in the rhythm of his season, he would have got to it faster. He wouldn't have been so late. He wouldn't have reverted back to some of the old throwing mechanics. He spent a lot of time with a throwing coach this offseason in an effort to get more efficient with his delivery. And that ball kind of hung up in the air and died on him, and he threw it late. So little things like that, especially when it's not like the bread and butter of who Tua is as a player, I thought were where he left a couple reps out on the field. But I graded him out. It was the best individual game performance that the Dolphins have had all season long. And you could probably go back to the end of season performances against Buffalo Week 18 last year, the playoff game against Kansas City, Baltimore Week 17. It's probably the best game he's played since Dallas of last year, right before Christmas, on Christmas Eve. So an encouraging development for him, because usually guys who come back off of those concussions with missed time, usually they don't perform so well right off the jump. And for Tua, you saw it got Tyreek Hill's best performance of the season from a grading standpoint with how I graded the game. So it definitely provided a jolt. It provided them an ability to move the ball. They had a number of long drives with ability to string together multiple plays. The pre-snap process and procedures were better. They didn't have as many pre-snap penalties. So all the little things that have really just snowballed and compounded for the Dolphins in addition to obviously not having Tua for the last month, all that looked a lot better, but they didn't play a complete football game.
Well, yeah, obviously the results were a lot better offensively, is they don't have to play the backup quarterbacks, and not just the backups, but even further into the depth at the position. And so I'm sure that will be a helpful step in Tua continuing to get reacclimated into the ebbs and flows of a season. Now, moving away from Tua on this offense, I think there's been a lot of positive signs for Miami's rushing offense. They've went over 150 rushing yards in each of the last 3 games. Curious how that's coming together. We know there's a lot of creativity with how Mike McDaniel schemes up the run. I'm sure it's going to be a big part of the plan for Miami on Sunday. What's contributing to kind of the success running the ball?
I think the biggest thing that you can look at, and they really got put under the microscope for how they chose to handle personnel on the offensive line this offseason. They didn't bring back Rob Hunt, and frankly, for $20 million a season, I understand why they didn't do that. They bet on Isaiah Wynn coming back. He's still on the pup. As far as I'm concerned, he's more of an urban legend than he is an option for the Dolphins on their offensive line. And frankly, the play of the guards that have been there, and Liam Eichenberg and Rob Jones, I don't know that I would interrupt that, because the continuity has been the biggest thing, and they did not have that last year. We could get to the end of the game against Buffalo, depending on how many snaps the Dolphins play offensively, and you could have 4 starters play more snaps through 8 games than the starters at the beginning of the year last year played all season long. Like, that's how much interruption. Taron Armstead, the backup, played 200 more snaps than he did last year. Robert Hunt, the backup there, played 400 more snaps than he did last year. The center, Connor Williams, the backup center, played 400 more snaps than he did last year. And it was for 4 out of 5 spots on the offensive line. So the fact that they have generally had a lot more stability with that group, it has reaped benefits after the first month of the season, where sometimes it's been Devon Achane and sometimes it's been Jalen Wright, who I don't think is getting anywhere near as much run in the backfield for how good he's looked every opportunity he's had. Raheem Mostert came back after missing about a month and provided you with a jolt in the run game, and obviously the experience that he has in the system. So you have this blend of traits and experience in the scheme with the running backs, who have been your most consistent group. Your offensive line has generally been stable all season long, and you're starting to see that really reap the benefits. The defining thing for the run game is going to be what the wide receivers and the tight ends can do on the edge, because I think they've had a lot of opportunities to run the ball between the tackles, and they haven't really wanted to do that. They still want to be a wide zone rushing offense. So in a game like the one against Indianapolis, they rushed for 188 yards, and against New England, and the tight end room has a lot of success with their blocks on the edge against edge defenders and off-ball linebackers and safeties that are running down and fitting into the alley. They didn't play particularly well against Arizona. Now, you still rushed for 150. 47 of that was one explosive run from Devon Achane. But that group has been very up and down. And when the outside run scheme has worked, it's been because that group shows up. And when it hasn't worked, even if you hit a couple of explosive runs, it's really hurt the consistency of what they do offensively.
I want to ask you a question about the defense. I think there's been a lot of injuries defensively. Of course, a new scheme with Anthony Weaver taking over. I think the unit's been pretty formidable this year so far in 2024. So despite the newness, despite the injuries, where do you think it's finding success? Like, what's working well? And then where do you think there's opportunities for it to improve?
Yeah, I think against Arizona, some of the guys that you didn't have hurt you. You had to play Cam Smith for the first time in his career, playing meaningful snaps. I mean, Vic Fangio didn't like him last year, so he didn't play as a second-round draft choice in favor of Eli Apple. And Marvin Harrison Jr. got the best of him in some reps, and that's because you didn't have Kader Kohu. Well, then you have Zach Sealers out with an injury at practice that he might need surgery for. By the time everybody listens to this, we'll probably get some clarity on that. But as of you and I recording this, we haven't heard about the update on Zach Sealer and what's going on in that situation. And then Javon Holland plays in some of the first half after missing the Colts game, and then he goes down with a knee injury. So and then Kyler Murray put on the cape, and that's something that Buffalo fans have been very accustomed to seeing when these two teams play each other, is the quarterback just making some Herculean type of throws, and that down the stretch kind of contributed to the 28 points that they did give up against Arizona. But right now, they can't rush a passer. Like, they don't have Jalen Phillips. Bradley Chubb's not back from the season-ending injury that he had last year. Chop Robinson has one move. He's like Zoolander. You've seen Zoolander. Surely you've seen Zoolander.
Oh, God, Kyle.
He's an ambi-turner. He can't turn left.
Yes, an ambi-turner. Yes, of course.
So,
thank you.
His pass rush plan needs to greatly expand. And so you didn't have Sealer up front to help you against Arizona, and you don't have those two guys on the edge that are your best two guys. And they've had to bring pressure as a result of that. And you're seeing more of Jalen Ramsey being involved in those opportunities. And it's worked well, but against Arizona, the numbers in the secondary without some of the other pieces in the secondary, it really hurts you. So that'll be a storyline to watch as this week goes on, as far as who's able to play for them or not.
All right, so that's the Miami side of things. Coming up here on the other side of it, we're talking Bills. Be sure to stick with us. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy knows that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime game, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5-hour energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. 5-hour energy knows that no matter what team you are rooting for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to help you keep fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5-hour energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide.
So, Joe, the AFC East doesn't necessarily look remotely close to what we thought it would look like when you consider Buffalo at 6-2. This was supposed to be a transitional competitive year for them. They're going to run away with this thing. We're currently 6-2, an opportunity to slam the door shut on the Dolphins for all intents and purposes with Miami and their slow start. Obviously, the Jets, who Buffalo already owns a head-to-head win in New York. What's the temperature check for Buffalo right now when you consider the games that they've played, the losses that they took as a loss in Houston and a loss in Baltimore? What's the temperature check as far as where this team is at relative to perception internally and perception in the landscape of a crowded AFC?
I think coming together is probably the right way to put it. Certainly the losses in Houston and in Baltimore are bad losses to take, as you probably think those are other likely teams to win their division, and you're talking about tiebreakers and seeding, and so those are bad losses to take, and certainly those are the best teams the Bills have played this year. I guess Seattle and Arizona would be the other two in terms of quality wins. And so I think the Bills are battle-tested throughout who they are as an operation throughout the last several years, so I don't know that I get overly concerned about beating good teams, but they are stacking wins, and it is coming together, I think, particularly on the offensive side of the football, where Josh Allen has a really different looking wide receiver core, and you're seeing the chemistry really kind of come together with Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and the efficiency that he brings from the slot, but Amari Cooper as well, adding a layer to this offense. They've really switched their run identity. They're becoming a lot more of a zone-oriented rushing attack, and it's been very successful. They're like 5th in the NFL in success rate on zone runs. And so kind of coming together in terms of the vision that I think Joe Brady has for this offense, taking over midway through last season, and then kind of having an opportunity to implement his own stuff this offseason. So you're seeing that. And then defensively, I think they've had some transition, obviously, with the safety position. And I think they're kind of up and down, but it feels like it's kind of coming together in ways on that side of the ball where you're seeing a little bit more cohesion with their coverage shells. You're seeing their rush packages being a little bit more effective. So they've been battling through a lot of newness, but I think if winning 3 in a row, it feels like in some ways they are hitting their stride.
Talk to me a little bit about exactly what you've seen from Josh Allen thus far in the first half of the season, where obviously the graphics go up with all the turnovers. Well, you look up and he's got 1 interception at the halfway point of the season this year. And from an efficiency standpoint, from a net yards per attempt, he's tied with that 2020 season in which he finished second in MVP voting. The raw yardage is down, but just about all the efficiency numbers are through the roof. Is it Josh and how he's changed? Is it Joe Brady and his impact and what the offenses look like? Because the first time these two teams played, kind of the game script really was the Bills defense generating some short fields and hitting an explosive play. And then you look up and Tua goes down with an injury, and it felt like all the other storylines from that game washed away. So now that we're midway through the season and you reflect on just how efficient Josh Allen has been this year, why do you feel like, what has been the major contributors to that?
Yeah, I think efficiency is the right word to invoke. And I think if you go to the Texans, Texans and Ravens losses, that's where Josh kind of got away from the efficiency a little bit, where kind of chasing some big plays down the field and kind of got away from the things that made him successful in the previous 3 games and what has made him successful in the 3 games since. I spent a lot of time this offseason wondering, what type of impact will the loss of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis have on Josh Allen? And those are, especially Diggs is a very good player. And the thought that I had, though, was without having the quote unquote burden of feeding the ball to Stephon Diggs 150, 160 times, coupled with not having to try to validate Gabe Davis as a number 2 receiver, who I think a limited player like him, if you're trying to make him a prominent piece of your offense, I think it constipates your operation when you're trying to pass the ball with the limitations there. And so, does this unlock another layer to Josh Allen's game in terms of how he approaches the field? And I think in watching Josh this year, I feel like his eyes are in the right places more often. I feel like he's doing the smart, right thing with the football more often. He's taking checkdowns more frequently. And I think that has helped. I think they run the ball as good as they have, especially with the way that the zone-oriented attack is coming together. And so I feel like there's a freedom that Josh has to operate, to just read the coverage and go where he's supposed to with the ball. And I think maybe not having Diggs and Davis has helped unlock that for Josh Allen, but there's been a lot more mature quarterback play out of Josh this year. And I think that the Bills have only turned the ball over 3 times all season. The one interception, Amari Cooper fell at the top of his route, and the corner was able to beat him to the ball. So the efficiency and the decision-making has just been a lot better.
The last time we saw these two teams play, Buffalo really banged up defensively. And just wanted an update from you as far as, obviously the metrics are great for them. Scoring defense, once again, is top 6. Seems like death and taxes are the only other 2 certainties in life other than Buffalo being at the top of the list in scoring defense under Sean McDermott. But how's this team health-wise looking on the defensive side of the ball? And how have they come out the other side of some of the young guys playing? Who do you feel good about that were young guys that were forced into some action that maybe you didn't expect to feel as a quality option for you the rest of the way this year?
Well, in terms of health defensively, Terrell Bernard's going to be the name to watch. He missed last week with an ankle injury, and we're recording this before Sean McDermott speaks on Wednesday. So by the time people listen to this, they'll probably get some level of an update on Terrell Bernard and his status and, if he's going to practice or not. But that's certainly the name to pay attention to at middle linebacker. Now, he's missed some time this year, so the Bills have kind of gotten used to having to work without him, and Balin Spector's kind of had those opportunities. And I don't know that Balin Spector's a very good player, but I think he's important for the operation for his ability to step in and, get everyone lined up and communicate. In terms of just players that have emerged, it starts with Christian Benford at corner. Was a 6th-round pick out of Villanova the same year that the Bills drafted Kyer Elam in the 1st round out of Florida. And Benford's just been better than him from the outset and has really, I think, ascended to being, at least this year, like an upper echelon performer at the cornerback position, where extremely physical, tackles extremely well, good technique and coverage, just kind of trust the technique and leverage of the defense. He's got ball skills, and I think he's been a really pleasant surprise for his ascension as a player. Terrell Bernard, if he is healthy, has become like an impact playmaker at the linebacker position. That'll be a big loss for the Bills if he can't go, especially for what he means in coverage. Dorian Williams, who's filling in for Matt Milano, has made a major jump forward in his 2nd season with the team, playing a lot more disciplined in coverage, but has always kind of been a good downhill player. And so between that and Greg Rousseau's really playing well on the edge, Epinesa has been good as a rotational player. They get Von Miller back this week. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of good player development, and I think you've had some veterans step up. I mean, Von Miller was a train wreck last year. In the 4 games that he played prior to the suspension, he had 3 sacks. So there's some good things happening defensively for the Bills. It just certainly looks a lot different with some new players and some new spots, including like a Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin are your starting safety. So they got a good scheme and a good system to develop players on that side of the ball, and they're playing well on defense.
So the last thing I have for you is I had a little birdie that reached out and said that one of the big developments on Locked On Bills recently was the elevation of Taron Johnson into franchise cornerstone. I wanted you to gas up Taron Johnson, avid franchise cornerstone player, and in his return as well. So
all right.
I was morally obligated to give you a hard time because one of your listeners reached out to me and said, "Hey,
shout out Bub." Shout out Bub. Obviously, that was Bub. Taron's always been good, man. He was a freaking All-Pro last year. I think, and you and I, we grade these players, every player in the league, and I do every 4 weeks. I do updates for the Bills through my Substack Herd Mentality, and it was time for player updates. And Taron had missed. He got injured in week 1 against the Cardinals with a forearm injury. He missed like 5 games. I think seeing Cam Lewis try to beat Taron Johnson, and then Taron Johnson coming back and being Taron Johnson. I mean, obviously the game clinching interception against the Jets, but like I have like a renewed appreciation for what he brings to the table as this slot corner that also is basically a Sam linebacker. It's insane. Like the Bills play nickel every single snap, and if they don't play nickel, they play dime. Right? You're not going to get 3 linebackers out of this team. And Taron is he's a straw that stirs the drink structurally for how the Bills want to play defense. Oh, by the way, he makes plays. And what he does in the box as a run defender, taking on contact and sniffing out plays is really outstanding. Not to mention he's a good coverage player. So probably overdue, but I had to give him the bump to franchise cornerstone. And again, probably overdue. But we're here now. We're here now. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, keys to victory for both sides of the equation. Be sure to stick with us. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties. You can use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure you use our URL so that they know that we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, joined by Kyle Krabs, the host of Locked On Dolphins. And it's time to talk keys to victory for both sides of this game. Kyle, for Miami to come to Orchard Park and get an upset.
I was going to say, you don't got to be shy about it. I mean, they haven't won in Orchard Park, I think, since, 16 was the last time they won up there?
I don't remember it.
I think it was the Jay Ajayi week 16.
Oh, boy. Rumbling.
Overtime game with all the field goals in the final minute to send it to overtime, and then Ajayi rips the long run off in overtime. I think that's the last time Miami won up there. It'd been a minute.
Man, you're not wrong. It has been a while. Boy. Yeah, it's been a while. It's not I'm searching for it right now. You're right. You're exactly right. It was 34-31 Dolphins in December, just Christmas Eve in 2016. That's the last time.
Yeah. So for the Dolphins to do that, the things that have kind of been Mike McDaniel tendencies need to not be Mike McDaniel tendencies. I think that's the biggest thing. Anytime Mike gets into a game script where he feels like he has to score 30 points to win the game, caution goes to the wind. We're going for it on fourth down in moments when we shouldn't go for it on fourth down. We're getting overly aggressive. We're getting overly complicated with some of the calls and the time in which it takes to get the calls in. And you don't have to look any further than fourth down and red zone for this team this year has already been hard enough. They're 2 of 15 on fourth down this year. That's a 13% conversion rate. And Mike has really dialed it back with the quarterback situation being what it was last year. They were 11 and 25 on fourth down last year. They were 28th in the league. Now they were second in touchdown conversion in the red zone last year. They're a bottom tier team at it this year. And those things popped up against Arizona. You get down inside the 15-yard line with 1 minute and 6 seconds left to run a play to get down inside the 10-yard line. You don't snap the ball again until 26 seconds left. You let a full 40 seconds run off trying to score a touchdown at the end of the half. And I remember that was a sequence that happened against Buffalo, where the way that they called the 2-minute or the 4-minute offense to close the first half, and they ended up getting a field goal there, but like they weirdly botched it because they didn't want to have a third down with 1 minute and 10 seconds left. It was 3rd and 11. They ended up converting, but like the call was weird because they didn't want to get Buffalo the ball back because they knew Buffalo was getting the ball to start the second half. Like that kind of stuff can happen. Like if you're going to get down in the red zone, you have to score touchdowns. Obviously against this Bills team that is capable of putting up points in a hurry and has a lot of different ways than they can beat you. Miami hasn't done that this year, but like the Mike McDaniel element as the big key to victory is you have to manage the game well. And I know a lot of Dolphins fans don't have a lot of confidence in that because usually when these two teams play, that game script goes a certain kind of way. And Miami makes mistakes after trading some blows with Buffalo early on. And then the game snowballs. And then it's like, oh, well, it's midway through the third quarter and we're down 10 points. We have to go for it on 4th down on our own 40-yard line. And you don't get it. And then you look up and now you're down 17 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. So that's the kind of stuff for Miami that it's been such a consistent theme, and it's been popping up, and it popped up against Arizona with situationally closing a half and how you manage the clock. Those things, you have to play a perfect game in that regard because this team is not focused, it's not disciplined, and it's not capable of avoiding beating itself right now. So you have to do your part as the guy who's managing the game to do that.
It's interesting. My number one key is game scripts as well. And I think it starts with the Bills starting fast on offense because I feel like to the points that you've made, game scripts have been problematic for Miami in this series, and that if you can get Miami to chase it, I think the decision-making and the execution can kind of fall apart. And so for Buffalo to be able to come out and score points early and put Miami in that spot, I think that's going to give them their best opportunity to win the game. Obviously, the Dolphins, I think if you can kind of keep them in a neutral game script, that's when they're going to be their most dangerous. And so don't allow that to happen. It's easier said than done, but go score points on offense and see if you can get Miami to kind of chase it a little bit and see if those mistakes that have come up in the past happen once again. I think the run defense for the Bills is going to be really important in this one. And if you go to that week 2 game, early on, Miami was moving the ball well. They were running the ball. They were kind of leaning into some quick passes and getting some yards after catch. And actually, my third point is trust the technique of the defense, because I think that combination of Miami's ability to run the ball and then hit some of those quick hitting passes and get yards after catch has been a challenge for the Bills at times this year, pretty much in every game, I would say minus Seattle last week, where the quick misdirection throws, the runs, where the Bills can kind of get creased. That's where they have their challenges. And I think Miami does have the ability to kind of challenge those spots of the Bills. And so run defense, squeezing gaps, being where you're supposed to be, fitting the run, and doing so with light boxes. We know the Bills will play light boxes. They're never going to give you heavy or even rarely neutral boxes. So those run fits with their front combined with trusting the technique of the defense, where you can't just run out of your spots due to all the play fakes and all the eye candy that Miami is going to present to you with motion and misdirection and all the tags that they have to all of their plays. If, Dorian Williams or Balin Spector, if he has to play, or Taron Johnson's going to be getting out of their spots, Miami's uniquely kind of built to take advantage of that. So good disciplined coverage with against that quick passing game is going to be important to neutralize Miami on offense.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would just leave you with off of that is I think the storyline I'm most interested in this game is the Dolphins' offensive line, which we talked about them earlier in the continuity that they have had, and they have really come together. I think this is a great test for them relative to playing New England, playing Indianapolis, who was down a couple of guys that didn't have to force Buckner go, playing Arizona, who's a rebuilding team with a lot of youth on the trenches. They still had some stout players, but it's a little different story. Can it perform for a whole game? And can you trust it if you're the play caller for Miami? And that's, I think, where I'm most excited to, outside of like actual game result. I want to know where all of this progress that we seem to have seen from the Dolphins offensive line against a good front, even if they play light boxes, okay, then you should average a healthy clip running the ball, and you should be willing to do it for 60 minutes and embrace that you're going to try to limit the possessions in this game and do so. Or are you going to say, oh, we got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and we got Tua back. So you looked up against Arizona. They threw the ball, I think, 26 times in the first half.
Right.
So that's one thing I am definitely going to be very keyed in on this game as well.
All right. We will see what happens on Sunday afternoon, 1:00 kick, Orchard Park, Bills, Dolphins, Week 9. That's it for today, but that's not it for the conversations around this game. Locked On Bills, Locked On Dolphins has you covered for all the pre and post game conversations that you could ever want. So make sure you're dialed in on both podcasts this week and every week. For Kyle Krabs, I'm Joe Marino. As always, we kindly ask you to share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up with you again real soon.